Okay, so let's take a look at this. Find all real zeros of x cubed plus 5x squared minus x minus 5. So what am I going to do here? Well, you need to find out what your possible zeros are. And in order to do this, this is the factors of 5 divided by the factors of the leading coefficient, which are 1, or the factors of the constant divided by the factors of the leading coefficient. So in this particular problem, this is not too difficult. The factors of 5 are going to be 1 and 5 because 1 times 5 is 5. And both of these are plus or minus, okay? Factors of 1 are just 1, so we are literally left with just plus or minus 1 and 5. So now what do I need to do in order to find what are the real zeros? Is I use synthetic division. I test each of these. So I'll try 1 first because that's obvious. What we write in synthetic division are the leading coefficients. We want to make sure that these exponents drop. This last one's going to be 0, and they do. So I just write them down. 1, 5, -1, -5. So if I had a gap, like let's say 5x squared did not exist, then I would need to put a 0 where the 5 is. Okay? So if we had another situation that was the case, that's what you would want to do. But here we don't have to worry about that. So from here, how does this work? Well, you bring the first one down, so that's 1, and then we multiply. So 1 times 1 is going to give me 1. We get 6. 1 times 6 is 6. I'm going to get 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And you subtract and you get 0. So what does this do? Well, this breaks. This is one of the zeros, which means that since it's divisible, what I'm left with is x squared plus 6x plus 5. Okay? So what this is saying is that I can factor this problem down into x minus 1 times x squared plus 6x plus 5. So all of this is equal to 0, right? So what I need to do now, or rather, I should say all of this is y, right? When y is 0, they're equal to 0. So now all I got to do is factor down x squared plus 6x plus 5. So let's take x squared plus 6x plus 5. And this one is easy enough to simply just factor it. So what times what is x squared? That's x and x. What times what is 5? Well, 5 is prime, so it better be 1 and 5. And because I can add 1 and 5 together, and that gives me 6, that gives me my other 0. So in conclusion, what are my zeros? What does this thing factor into, rather? X minus 1, x plus 1, and x plus 5. Okay? So these are what are called the factors. Right? Factors just means what times what gives me the value, gives me the polynomial. What the question, is specifically asking me for, what are my zeros? Well, your zeros are when each of these are equal to 0 and you solve. So this is clear that this would be x equals 1, x equals -1, and x equals -5. And if you're looking at this and you're like, well, I don't see that, well, just plug 1 in here, right? What do you get? Well, 1 minus 1 is 0. Plug in -1 here. What do you get? -1 plus 1 is 0. Plug in -5 here. What do you get? -5 plus 5 is 0. And there you have it. So this is kind of how we approach a lot of these problems. You just use synthetic division. You factor it down. Once you get to a quadratic, you use one of the factoring techniques that we've discussed. Sometimes you want to use completing the square. Sometimes, like in this one, we can easily factor. And if all else fails, you can always use the quadratic formula. Hopefully that helps you out, and I'll see you all in the next video.